Hey YouTube, I'm out here under the sunshade. This summer shuffle has officially begun. It's been so hot I need to move the plants around throughout the day if they're in too sunny of a place, or I try to pay as close attention to them as I can to see what they need. So far everything's doing pretty well. I wanted to show you guys this project that I've got in the works. Should be pretty simple. So I had these rocks left over from a landscape project that somebody did before we purchased this house. They were just a pile of them dumped under the deck. So I thought this rock looked interesting. So I took a diamond drill bit and drilled some holes in there so I could have tie-down wires, and then I thought, well, it might look cool if I could get it elevated a little bit to give it some height. So I found another rock that kind of fit in there, and I used JB Weld. I don't know if you can see it. I think I did a pretty good job hiding it, but just regular JB Weld adheres to stone, which I did not know. I had some left over from some sort of metal repair on a lawnmower that I had done a year ago or so. So I said, hey, let me go ahead and use this because it's just drying up and going bad. So I thought it turned out pretty good. It's pretty neat from both sides. So I've got my tie-down wires in there, and then this little juniper is going to be the subject that ends up going on this stone somehow. I don't know how I'm going to orient it or what it's going to look like, but I'm going to go ahead and wire up this juniper, and then I will come back and show you guys forming the muck and getting the tree on the stone. And I've got some moss prepared, so we'll be good to go. So I'll be back once I get this tree wired. Okay, so I'm ready to go with this juniper rock planting. I've got the tree wired up. So I basically just went through and thinned out the branches, got rid of a lot of the crotch growth. I wired everything. I'm thinking that this is going to be sort of the kind of angle that I'm going for. It just depends on how much I can get the roots combed out. So that's ready to go. Got a little bit of soil mix good to go, and then I've got some muck here that I'm gonna put on here first, and then I've also got a bag of moss that I collected a couple weeks back. So the muck that I have here, of course, is a little wet, but we're gonna give it a go anyway. I may be able to squeeze out a bit of the water. Oh yeah, this is way too wet. But we are gonna run with it anyway. So I'm gonna go around the edge with the muck, obviously. So I'm gonna put these wires back in because I don't want them to be underneath of the muck walls that I'm making. I don't want the muck to be very thick. I want it to be just enough to make a wall to hold in soil for me. And I don't know how high I'm going to have to make the muck walls, but I'm just making them just high enough to hold a tiny bit of soil to start. This muck that I made a couple weeks ago is starting to get really pretty rank. So be thankful that you aren't here to smell it. I find that the muck sticks a little bit better to the stone if the stone is dry when you're first applying it. So that's what I do. The stone has been sitting out in the hot sun, so it seems to be sticking pretty well. Hopefully the camera angle is okay and my arm isn't in the way. I'm still new at this whole filming and talking to myself thing. Hopefully it's halfway entertaining. And if anything, hopefully it just inspires you to go out and do something like this. You end up with something beautiful for very little money. I think this juniper cost me $15. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is let's pull this guy out of here and see just how root bound we are. Of course we're pretty darn root bound, but I'm going to try to comb this out a little bit. We're late in the season still, so I'm not gonna go cutting a lot of root, but I can probably tease this enough to make the root a little bit more flexible. It just seems kind of like a sandy loam that this is growing in, so I think I can get it loosened up a bit. It's sandy loam and bark, pretty typical for nursery stock, but I am not going to cut this root. I just want it to be flexible for me, and I'll keep it protected relatively for a few weeks. After doing this, you don't want to do something like this and throw it out into the full sun. So, all right. So now that we've got that, bring this guy back here. Try to get that on a good angle for you. And I'm gonna put a bit of my soil mix on the bottom here. Doesn't need to be a whole lot because I don't want to raise it up. It's already kind of high enough. I just want a little something for the initial roots to go into. So this is going to be, you know, this root ball is going to be sitting higher for a little while until I can get it reduced, but I will not be doing any of that right now, like I said. So let's just get it in here and see how it looks. So I've got 2 tie down wires, so I can get it tied down from 2 different angles. So I think that's going to be perfect. So I've got it sort of angled, each one 45 degrees. So let's see how that looks. That looks pretty cool. All right, so I got my wire cutters here. Trim these. These push down, and a little pump sprayer. Just give these roots a spritz while I'm working here. It's hot as heck out here today, as usual for July in Maryland. So I'm definitely going to need to build up some more muck, and I'm going to need to raise some of these branches that are down too low, but I'll show you why and what I'm doing here. I need to get that out of the way to put a little bit more soil in here. I need to get myself a smaller soil scoop for situations like this when you're trying to get soil in tight places. So I'm going to cover that with muck, and then obviously moss. See if I can get a little bit of this soil in here. Angle that. Oops, I got a big chunk of bark there. This is my growing mix. This is turfus, compost, red lava, pine bark, and a little bit of crushed granite. I get it from Tractor Supply. It's sold as chicken feed, chicken grit. Some of it has lactobacillus in it for aiding digestion in chickens, and I was a little bit worried about that, wondering whether or not that would hurt a plant, and I did some research, and apparently it is not harmful. So I've continued to use it and haven't had any issues. So I need to pull this branch up right now to get it out of the way so I can work under here. You can kind of see what I got going on here. Put a little bit more soil there, and then I'm going to finish this up with muck. So, which it always ends up taking more muck than you think, because you end up needing more of a wall than you thought. So I'm going to try to make this thin, as thin as I can. But I've got nice long fibers of sphagnum in this muck, along with bentonite clay and some manure. It's a recipe that I saw online, and the sphagnum moss and the clay, the mixture of that, when it dries, it sets up almost like, what am I trying to say? Kind of almost like a clay brick if it were fired in an oven. But it still breathes. It still allows roots to grow into it. But it gives you structure. Very strong structure. Now when I first start with the planting, I always do protect it, because I call it putting it in prison under a cage. I'll make a little cage for it out of chicken wire. If you have like a screened in area, that would be good, but you've got to protect it from squirrels and birds for the initial planting period, because if something gets into it before the roots take hold and it all becomes one, it can, rip it apart in short order, and then you got a big problem. Because if you're at work or wherever when it happens, your roots could dry out, and that could be game over. So I always play it safe, and that's based on crappy experiences that I've had with the local squirrels. Keep that fiber in there. And then once I get this on here, I'm going to start to apply some moss. And this high hump right here, that's not something that I really want in the final design, but I'm just not willing to cut that root out from the planting angle change right now, just because we're into the season. So for now, it really doesn't bother me all that much. I think it looks kind of cool. Give some height to things here. So, all right, let me rinse my hands. And we can get some moss. Hopefully this moss is still in pretty good shape. Looks like it is. When I go on walks through the nature trails with my wife and the dog, I'm always keeping an eye out for good places for moss. And there is a trail that's paved with blacktop, and it's in the shade of the forest. So anywhere where you have blacktop that stays wet for a while and doesn't get a lot of sun, you can get great moss. So I'm certainly blessed with it. I know that a lot of people are not, but if you haven't found a good source, just keep looking. I know that you can buy the moss spores online, but I think a lot of that is just kind of a rip-off. But if that's your only way to do it, then certainly go with that. But chances are, if you look hard enough, you can find pretty good moss. So I'm trying to get under here. I'm trying to use as many big pieces as possible. So if you use smaller pieces and piece it together too much, then that's when you end up with some structural issues. So I try to get the largest sheets I can. I collected this a couple weeks ago, but I've tried to keep it moist, but it's looking like I have not done the best job of that after all, but it will come back to life fairly quickly once it starts being watered consistently again. Just turn this guy around. So this part, this side, I'm going to consider this the front. It's very vertical, so that to me makes it very important that I get some solid pieces. So let me see. This is more dried up than I thought. We are going to go with it because it's what we got. What we've got. And when the muck is really wet, it does adhere better because the water from the muck soaks into the moss and helps it stick. Almost like plaster. I found a good piece. All right, there we go. That's a good piece. That's a really good piece. That's good because this is probably the least structurally sound part of the whole composition right here. So I can have that go up. Just give this a good press. I can feel the water soaking into it, which is great. If I see any areas where the muck is coming through, I'll add more moss. Let's see if I can, one more decent piece here. This is a lesson to me that if you're going to collect moss, you need to keep it moist and don't let it dry out. And you can see how dry this is. I can't really even pull it apart. So I'll moisten it up and hopefully it'll be usable for the next time. So I'm just going to give this another push. Push it too hard because the black water is really kind of wanting to come through. So this is the initial look at the planting here. I'm going to try to lower this branch a little bit, but you can kind of see what I ended up with. So, I mean, it was very little work. Hopefully this fills in on this side, and I'll certainly keep it very well watered, and I'll give you guys an update on what it looks like in a month or so. Hope you guys enjoyed that, and keep growing bonsai trees.